Hello, everybody. We're back to talk about some medical issues today. I thought first and foremost we'd talk about gallbladder disease because everybody seems to have an interest in that of late, and we'll discuss both some of the anatomical features and the physiological features associated with gallbladder disease. But let me start off by saying this is Gastro Primo. Want you, if you would, please, to acknowledge us on our Facebook page. Share with your friends and tag people that we can help. We're here by way of YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you would, click the subscribe button. Ring the bell for new content updates and put a thumbs up if you like us and share it with your friends. Of course, we're not here to be your doctor. We're here to give you information, historically put some things in perspective, and maybe tell some stories about medicine that you might find interesting. I've been doing this a long time, and as a result, have gathered an awful lot of information that has been accumulated over the years. So I thought one of the things we'd talk about today is gallbladder disease, or the vesicula, as the Spanish call it, an organ whose function really not very well understood, even by today's standards. It appears as though it was designed and put in place to serve a storage function. Well, with modern day technology and the ability to get food pretty much down at the corner, we no longer have to have that much storage capacity. But it appears as though that's why the gallbladder is there. It, for many centuries, served humans as that reservoir of readily available digestible fluids that, when food became available on demand, you could access for digestion. Well, now that we no longer have to run from caves and forage for food, that storage capacity is really not necessary any longer. So, what has happened over the past few centuries is the gallbladder essentially becoming unnecessary. The liver is able to manufacture bile salts, which are materials which help the foodstuffs that we have available to us to be absorbed more efficiently. I've always asked the question why we would need to go through that process to gain access to fuel. It seems as though if fuel were made more readily available and was more easily chemically able to be digested and absorbed, we wouldn't need bile salts. But the process has to take place somehow, and this appears to be the way that it, teleologically at least, has settled in. So, the liver makes materials, one of which is bile salt. Bile salts are chemicals that are manufactured by the liver cells. And when the liver cells manufacture that biliary material, it drains down through the biliary tree into the gallbladder in large part, and to some degree into the intestine, where it is adsorbed to foodstuffs and makes them more water soluble, therefore more readily available for absorption in the small intestine. When that bile salt gets deposited in the gallbladder, it either goes into or stays out of solution. And in large part, that is determined by water content, a fat called lysolecithin, and bile salts. Those three components, along with electrolytes, either allow the solution to be much like iced tea with sugar, dissolved, or in which case some of the materials fall out of solution, deposited in the bottom of the gallbladder. When those deposit in the gallbladder, they tend to form concretions along with mucus. That's a material that's deposited in the gallbladder by the gallbladder epithelium. And when that happens, those concretions over time can become stone-like material. Depending upon your genetic makeup and how your biliary tree deposits those materials in the gallbladder, determines what the major kind of fallout that you might exhibit happens to be. The major form of gallstones in the human anatomy is made up of a cholesterol-like material. There are a small portion of gallstones which are made up of a more firm material, which is what we call a pigmented gallstone. People who have a lot of breakdown of red blood cells in the bloodstream, and those deposit in the liver and get excreted into the bile, can deposit inside the gallbladder and form these pigmented gallstones. But that is a smaller percentage of what the majority of gallbladder disease is at the root of. And so when you're talking about gallstones per se, it's a precipitation of a fatty or cholesterol-like material in the gallbladder that ultimately inspissates and or forms a stone-like concretion, which then blocks the outlet to the gallbladder, called the cystic duct, and ultimately causes the gallbladder to swell up, get inflamed, and rupture if something isn't done about it. So I like to get into the philosophy of it all, and when you consider the gallbladder's importance, it probably served a very useful force for many years as we cavemen ran in and out of caves away from dinosaurs to gather food and to digest it. And since we weren't able to go to the corner market to get our food back then, we had to have chemicals which were able to digest our food on demand. The gallbladder probably served that purpose. And when you look at these things, the appendix and some of the other organs that appear to be vestiges nowadays probably served similar functions. We've simply outgrown them. So the gallbladder is an organ whose importance in modern day anatomical considerations really has been significantly deflated. So we look at the gallbladder as almost an organ whose function probably could be removed at birth. It doesn't appear as though there's any significant vestigial function that the gallbladder serves other than as a storage organ and possibly as I described it. Given that, the gallbladder kind of becomes an obstacle. And if you're genetically inclined for those chemicals that I mentioned to you earlier to be out of balance, then the tendency to form those concretions is increased, and the likelihood of getting gallbladder occlusion and obstruction and leading to gallbladder disease is significantly increased. And so there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than to maintain your weight, keep your diet to as normal a compartmentalization as you can. Of course, maintain your fluids at as high an efficiency as you possibly can. And at the first sign of having gallbladder difficulties, get it looked at and evaluated. A few years back, we found some chemicals that were very helpful called tertiary bile acids. You've heard, I'm sure, of some of the gallbladder dissolving chemicals that were released onto the market, only to find that while they did work, they dissolved cholesterol gallstones quite well. As soon as you stopped taking the tertiary bile salts, the gallbladder dysfunction returned and the gallstones came back. So we really don't have an alternative to taking the gallbladder out at this point. I'm going to talk about in the next one, next discussion, some of the new ways of dealing with gallbladder disease, which I think you're going to find fascinating because they are marketable approaches to gallbladder disease that I think some of you will find very interesting. I'll stop there and we'll move on to the next session when we get a chance here. Just remember, this is Gastro Primo. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We are trying to acknowledge some of the commonly held educational information that's out there, but also hopefully to bring some new stuff to the forefront. So if you would like us, ring the bell and subscribe. We really will enjoy moving to the next session. Until then, I'll see you on the next one.